Hello, good evening, everyone. Monica Sikora here, and joining me today for another Power Hour is our fantastic nutritionist, Isha Patel.
Hello, Monica. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, and quite actually excited about the topic today. That's, I think, a not so obvious one when it comes to nutrition, is it?
No, absolutely not. Not many people resonate it, but it's so important.
Definitely. So, in line with just passing our Mental Health Awareness Day a few days ago, I thought it would be a really good idea to talk a little bit more about the mental well-being and how nutrition and exercise can support mental health, and how we can make sure that we do our bit to stay in the best possible shape and condition. And I think it's particularly important as well, coming into the winter of 2020, so 2020 being a tough year as it is on many of us, and then obviously come into those dark and gloomy winter days, I think that is something that definitely would be worth enlightening us on how we can get more out of our day. So Isha, what can we do from a nutrition standpoint to make sure that our mental health being is in a tip-top condition?
So when we look at mental health, particularly one thing that a lot of people say is stress and anxiety, we can look at the symptoms they're experiencing. And there are a lot of symptoms, but I'm just going to highlight kind of three of the major ones that I hear quite often, because I feel like that helps with overall health as well. So first of all, weight gain. Stress is really linked negatively to weight gain, primarily because when we're stressed, we have all sorts of hormones being secreted, cortisol being one of them. And what cortisol actually does is it puts you in the flight or fight mode. So your body's always alert. It's always kind of like on a lookout for threat. And whilst that's happening, your cortisol's high, but also your adrenaline's high. When you feel like that phase is past, the adrenaline weans off and it wears down, and you almost feel hungry. So you kind of crash. I don't know if you've had that feeling where you're really excited and you get really tired, and you often really get hungry. And me personally, I know that I kind of want to eat something that's quite high in salt. Like I really want chips, or I want something sweet and sugary and carbohydrate, something that's quite comforting. And that often leads to us overeating or overindulging in these foods. Now, if you're in a constant cycle of stress, that is going to cause the overeating and the binge eating cycle that it's hard to break out of, because then your body's used to it. And, following the subsequent cycles, you just feel to fend for those foods.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that, stress can do, and it can help gain the weight that you don't want. Another thing it does, so the cortisol hormone again, it causes the muscles to ache, it causes the sugar cravings, but it also slows down liver detoxification. So where our liver is known to detoxify unwanted toxins and helps to kind of aid in the metabolism process, everything is slowed down. And the cortisol adds the fat, and it's particularly around our abdomen area and our sides, so the hips. So you kind of get, the term muffin top, which I really don't like, but a lot of people feel like they've put on the weight in their mid region, and that is primarily due to stress. So if you have got that area, look at your stress, check in with yourself, see what you're doing or what you're not doing.
And I think it's worth mentioning. Sorry.
No. Fine. I was just going to say this is supported by studies. So they have found lab mice who are under stress tended to get fat pellet food rather than the healthier kind of low fat food. So it's more comforting, which definitely supports our hypothesis on this.
And I think we can all, without even looking at the studies, I think we can all relate to that. I think we all have had moments where we're reaching for those so-called bad foods under emotional strain or stress, or, I think even the name comfort food tells you a lot about what it does to our psyche and how emotionally we approach certain foods and we consider them to comfort us. What is really interesting, I think, is although we try not to naturally obsess over the aesthetics and how we look, and I think hopefully a lot of us have moved on from that unhealthy relationship with how we have with the way we look. But I think it's fair to say that if our body does happen to put on weight, and it, happens kind of almost without us necessarily knowing that this is happening and that we're contributing to that, that alone can have a negative effect on our mental health, well-being, right? So it's not just the fact that our body's not necessarily processing nutrients and it is promoting the fat storage, is also the fact that we then probably look in the mirror and we're not quite happy with the way we look, and then the cycle of dieting and crash dieting starts, and again we're running into more problems than what we started with.
No, you're completely right, and that kind of causes a chain of other mental health conditions. I'm not going to go into it, but it is not very pleasant. So it's like you said, knowing that and being comfortable in your skin. So we have experts like us to help you achieve these things and kind of understand about healthy eating and exercise. So it's quite good that there is avenues now that are accessible like that.
So if we were looking at a physical stress, that tension very often that we feel, what nutrients and foods would support that release and that healthy balance in our bodies, and what nutrients and foods would be quite working not in our favor?
So I guess the things that would not work in our favor would be the kind of sugary foods, the carbohydrates that are quite refined, and any unhealthy fat. So that's your deep fried kind of donuts, chips, sausages, things like that. And the things that would support are foods that are complex carbohydrates, because they are broken down slower, they're absorbed differently. The healthier fats, particularly those that are high in omega-3 fatty acids, so lots of avocados, olives, primarily looking at more of a Mediterranean diet. That's quite a good example if people want to look into that. And also supporting foods that are rich in vitamin B's, vitamin C, and magnesium. So lots of dark green leafy vegetables and red meat if you're a meat eater. Otherwise, look at beans and pulses for vegetarians and vegans. Then we're looking at citrus fruits, bell peppers for your vitamin C. So a whole host of more plant-based, kind of vegetables that are diverse in colors that will really support those vitamins that help to kind of manage the hormones for stress.
On that note, I think it's worth mentioning something on the exercise side, and I think it's not something, and I find that really an interesting fact, and it's also not something that necessarily pops to people's head when they think of benefits of exercising. Obviously, we know the benefits of exercising on the emotional and mental well-being in terms of the release of endorphins, the overall boost of energy that a lot of people getting in the short term and in the long term when they keep up the regular, healthy, active lifestyle. Now, where it gets interesting versus stress. So that correlation between how our body deals with the physical muscular tension and how it then deals with the emotional side of things, that same kind of feeling that very often happens at the same time. So a lot of people, without even knowing, when they go through periods of high stress, they tense a lot through the muscles, and the body's physical response follows the body's emotional and mental response. So what is really interesting is that studies have shown that including more isometric based exercises allows your body to improve the way it deals with muscular tension and that release of the tension when we're stressed. So when we're dealing with emotional stress. When I'm talking about isometric based exercises, that would be any kind of exercises that you're holding the tension. So you're essentially bringing yourself into the position of tension and you're holding it for a certain amount of time. And one of the studies was particularly interesting is when they took people with tight shoulders and the tendency to get neck and shoulder pain as they go in through a stressful period, whether at work or in their day-to-day life. And they asked them to hold plank position for a duration of 60 days and just increase that duration periodically. I think it was every 3 days that they were supposed to add 10 seconds to the plank. And what was really interesting is that the body's physical fitness and strength and endurance has improved, obviously, because the muscular tension and the endurance at which the muscles can hold the tension has improved. But that also correlated with less tension and the and the body's better ability to deal with emotional tension after they completed the study. So it's really important to know that, everything that we do obviously has positive effects, but there's actual scientific research behind how the controlled contraction can release the not so controlled, the subconscious contractions that we hold in when we go through the emotional stress. So fun fact for you guys.
No, that's really interesting. I think it's interesting that you mentioned about muscle tightness, because when I look at nutrition, I don't always look at like shoulders and neck, which is interesting, and I will do from now on. But when I look at muscle tension, I think about their digestion. So I ask them a lot about digestion. How do you find when you're stressed? Do you find like you're eating properly, or do you find like you go to the toilet okay, or what happens? And often they do say that, there's lots of negative symptoms, and that's a quite factual base, because it not just slows down your tension in your shoulders and neck, but also internally. So your colon slowed down, your stomach muscles are slower. So peristalsis is not as effective. And this can mean that the food is broken down either slower. So it's just sitting there causing bloating or abdominal upset. If you get that kind of like butterfly feeling, it's just the muscle contracting in all different ways, which can cause constipation, or sometimes too quickly the other way, and diarrhea. So there's some nasty effects on that. Acid reflux is another one. Nausea is another kind of symptom that lots of people get under stress. And long-term stress can cause ulcers in your colon and stomach, so it can lead to IBD. So, IBD, lots of people think it's not to do with stress, it's to do with other factors, but stress is a massive part in that. So that's one negative effect on digestion. And then others, other negative things are your gut bacteria. So as we all know, as I've been talking about it so much,
there she goes.
Gut bacteria changes throughout the day. Under stress, your good bacteria are kind of depleted because they shy away in your many layers of the colon, and the negative bacteria come out to play because they know this is what they thrive in. They're starting to feed and multiply in abundance. And when this happens, the intestinal barrier weakens in our stomach. So your gut lining is almost thinning out without even realizing. So this is the cause for leaky gut, as we know, as I've discussed previously, and that causes you not to absorb the nutrients. You're just kind of vulnerable to lots of infectious diseases. You're easily prone to cold. So your immune system is actually getting lowered. So that's kind of on the digestion side, a little bit of what happens when you're under stress. So it's quite nasty what's going on.
And I think it's very important to mention, because I think a lot of times we, in a Western world and, in a current kind of fast-paced society that we have, we tend to deal with the symptoms and the outcomes of our actions more than we actually deal with the root causes of what's causing all the problems that we're having. So if you miss that relationship, that, that kind of the actual source of the problem, you end up in that kind of vicious cycle of trying just to deal with the symptoms, whether that's, indigestion, whether that's bloating, whether that's issues with your bowel movements, and you forget that actually, that has not always been with you, and something has changed and something impacted it. So I think it's really important that, as we're talking about the physical part of it, as we're talking about nutrients, as we're talking about foods that we're eating, we're looking at something that is so incredibly important and crucial, and we can almost have all the other stuff in tip-top condition, spot perfectly planned throughout the week. And yet, if our lifestyle is fully stressed, we don't sleep enough, we're constantly tense and anxious, there's only as much as we can do to fully improve our health.
Absolutely. So like you mentioned sleep. Under stress, if you're not sleeping, something called our circadian rhythm, which is within us, it's a timer, our internal body timer, that's out of sync, and that causes weight gain, that causes so many other things that we don't realize. So all of these things come into play. It's just diet and lifestyle together. If you're not sleeping, it's worth noting down your sleeping hours and what time you wake up, what you're experiencing when you're waking up, and then figuring out what the next steps are. But these are things that shouldn't be ignored at all.
In terms of the sleep from the exercise standpoint, there are kind of the two schools of that, and two groups that tend to report different things. So we have people that tend to sleep like babies straight after the workouts, and they get a great night's sleep. So they tend to work out in the evening and go straight to sleep, kind of, have some small supper and go to bed and have a good night's sleep and recover overnight. Then there's also a group of people that get such a strong surge of energy straight after the workouts that they tend to work out in the morning. So I think it's really important that we make it work for us. Everyone's slightly different, everyone's body clock is different, and our energy levels vary throughout the day, our lifestyle vary. So just because working out in the morning works for one person, it might be that you respond way better and it doesn't disrupt your day if you work out later in the evening. So make sure it just works for you, and especially if you kind of struggling with fitting the routine around your day, my suggestion will always be start with a workout as opposite to the other way around, because it's much easier to just get it out of the way and go about your day than having that looming over us during the day, allowing the work to stress you out, the kids to stress you out, your partner to stress you out, whoever stresses you out to get in play, and then there's always going to be an excuse not to do it. So if you're having troubles with that, do it first thing in the morning. Yeah.
What tip would you give those that, have just work commitments and they can't do it in the morning? Is there any way that you can kind of like give a tip to do a particular kind of workout in the evening so that they're relaxed for the evening and they're able to sleep?
Absolutely. There's two things that I think are worth remembering. Small and frequent are better than long, grand workouts. So it's almost like for an average Joe, that is not an Olympian and just wants to keep an active, healthy lifestyle, the more you move, even if it's short bursts of activity, the better it is throughout the day and the week for you. So you have a greater benefit of shorter but more frequent workouts than it is from 1 or 2 big workouts in a week. Now, if that's all you can do, I'll still say go ahead and do it. There's still benefits to it. But if you're struggling to fit it around your week, absolutely take it in smaller chunks. You can, depending on what you're working on, obviously, if it's strength, if it's cardio, you can break it down into small sections. You can even do 20-minute workouts, one during lunchtime break, one in the evening straight after work. And even if you just do half an hour every day, that still counts more than doing 1 hour workouts once a week. So it's much easier also to push yourself a little bit further. So that's the whole concept of high intensity training. It became such a hit because it saves you a lot of time. So it became because it gives you the results, but it doesn't require you spending 3 hours on the gym floor, right? You can do it. First of all, you can use your body weight and you can do it at home, which is brilliant for us right now. And second of all, it's easy to fit around your day. So if the mornings are a no-go, I say try lunchtime. If lunchtime is a no-go, go straight after work, whether at home or in a gym or outside, wherever is your preference. And half an hour and you're done. You can go about your day. So if you look at it that way, it's just a much easier commitment rather than having to obsess that, I read a study that exercising and this time will be better. For us, general public, think about the more activity you have during the day, the better. And that counts for anything, taking a walk instead of driving or taking a bus if you can, jumping on a bike instead of jumping on the tube, going for a short run, going for a long walk. Everything counts towards it. And the more you move during the day, the better and the healthier you are. And you can stay off those lower back pains and those hip pains.
That's fabulous. And I guess you can get all that nice fresh air and you just feel relaxed, just smelling, like the grass or the leaves. It's just so nice. And you feel like you're connected with nature almost in a way.
Absolutely. And you know what? There's obviously, if we're on the mental health subject, what is really important is the social aspect of working out. So again, two types of people. There are people that love to use the exercise time as the meditation time. So they like being on their own. There's a time when they can be calm. There's a time that they can kind of spend with themselves. And that's fantastic. I'm kind of one of those people. I love that when, I'm being left to my own means and and I'm really going through my workout, whatever it is that I'm working on, I like to be on my own, and whether that's outside in nature or, you know, on the floor in my living room, it's my time. And then there's also obviously people that use it as a form of interacting with others. You know, there's a huge social aspect of joining a class group or training with another person, budding up, right? The beauty of current situation is that you don't need to do it, you know, you don't need to physically go anywhere. You can do it through Zoom, you know. We run classes where people are joining from all around the UK, and actually it's fantastic because they're now forming those little groups, and you can see them actually talking to one another, and you can see them enjoying tuning in to the same group, and they kind of going through the workout together. So the social aspect, or just that calming, you know, meditation like aspect for a person, is equally as important as the physical benefits that the exercise gives you.
No, totally. I couldn't agree more. I'm so happy you said that. It's just reminded me to like say this to my clients when I'm focusing on the stress and the exercise aspect, or I can just pass them on to yourself. So it works.
Or I'm not even going to deal with that. Absolutely. Isha, I think in terms of the nutrients, is there any magic nutrient or any group of nutrients, any supplements that we should be taking to support that mental well-being? So say somebody is having a stressful job or is having quite a hectic schedule, and, you know, despite their best efforts, not every week is a week when they can stay in full control. Is there anything that they can do on the supplementation side that they can actually support that mental and emotional well-being?
Yeah, so I personally, like, I love magnesium glycinate. Anyone that's stressed or suffer with like anxiety or insomnia or just tense muscles, magnesium is really good for this. But there are 7 different types of magnesium, so it's best to get the correct one. Magnesium glycinate is kind of the correct one to take for this particular condition or the umbrella that we're talking about. It helps calm the muscles, it promotes relaxation, it helps with sleeping. I've noticed it myself, so I can kind of, you know, testify that it works. So it's really good in terms of that. Other herbal supplements, things like ashwagandha is really good. There's valerian, chamomile, lavender, so you can have these as herbal teas, which would be good. It's a good replacement for caffeine, because you shouldn't really have caffeine post 1 p.m. as it lingers in your body for 5 hours. So caffeine has a half-life. It does stay in our body. So if you have it at 1, it's really going to stay in your system till 4. So it's not a good idea to have it post, you know, 2 or 3, as it will kind of stay till the evening and not help you get to sleep. So switch to herbal teas, or switch to chicory root or inulin fiber, because that's a good prebiotic that helps you sleep.
What about, because I'm sure that, and I heard that through my clients as well, what about decaf?
Decaf, I mean, it's individual. If it works for you, it works. It doesn't work for everyone, because decaf, I hate to say it, does have some teeny amount of caffeine, and for those that are really sensitive, it does trigger something. Even those that, you know, drink it, they're so sensitive to it, they are kind of like alert. So it's not always for everyone, but if it works for you, then carry on by all means.
Fair enough. Obviously, I don't think we need to mention smoking and drinking. That will definitely not help. But I think what is worth saying is that on the mental well-being and emotional well-being side of things, although there are obvious addictions like alcohol, like cigarettes, like drugs, if we're not careful, we can turn pretty much anything to our addiction, right? So an unhealthy relationship with exercise could be an addiction. An unhealthy relationship with food can definitely be an addiction. So I think what is really always good, and I'm sure that you'll second that, is observing your emotional triggers, because they might not be always considered unhealthy by the general public, but they might actually be your emotional response to stress and your reliance on that particular activity or substance in order to make yourself feel better. So having that awareness to start with, and then asking the relevant person, whether that's yourself for the nutrition advice, myself, or any other training professionals for training advice, or if we're feeling like we're really struggling, don't be scared to ask for help on the emotional and mental well-being side of things, because I think hopefully we're past the stage where it's a taboo. Hopefully everyone understands that without a healthy mind, the healthy body does not fully exist. So look after yourselves as a wholesome, full body with all systems working together, not just a beautiful, sculpted and shaped physical body.
And we're all here, you know, in clinic, we're very supportive. So even if those that feel like they can't come in to talk to us, we can offer a phone call. So I do 15-minute phone calls to clients. So if you need to ask a question, or if you feel like you don't know if it's right for you, just have a chat and see what we can do for you. So, you know, there's really no shame. There's no judgment. It's an open door, you know, policy at our clinic. So that's the beauty of perfect balance.
Yeah, and that's probably the best way to finish our today's chat. Thank you very much, Isha. Thank you, everyone, and please feel free to leave any questions that you may have in the comment section below, or join us in a 15-minute consultation by contacting our reception at pbclinic.com. Have a fantastic evening, and I will see you next week.
Thank you. Take care.